Okay guys, today we are going to talk about very small palm-sized amplifier. It's a speaker amplifier, mind you, and it's this small because, like many other amps lately, it's based on that Texas Instruments 3255 amplifier chip. And also because power supply is external. It's external switching power supply that can go from 24 volts up to 48 and from 3 amperes up to 10 amperes. And that will determine how much power you can get from this one. I got for review here the smallest and like most affordable power supply of only 24 volts, 3 amperes. And that is the package that costs $80 together. So really cheap as chips. What you get here is a small, basically technically this is an integrated amplifier, even though they call them power amps nowadays. It's integrated because it does have small preamplifying circuit. It has volume control here. It doesn't have a remote. And it has 2 different sets of inputs. Both are RCA single-ended. You can circle them by simply pressing the button in front. And there is even a subwoofer output here, which I don't know anything about because in the manual it doesn't say anything about where is a cutoff frequency or anything like that. When something like that happens, it's usually just a fixed cutoff at around 200 or 300 hertz, but for sure you would have to worry about crossover frequency and things like that in your sub. This small amp doesn't possess any functions like that. Now once turned on, it lights, and I have to say that it is slightly too bright for my personal taste, especially this ring around the volume knob when I'm in a really dark room and dark environment, which I often do because I'm like a bat that way. I like dark rooms. But in a bright room, it's just fine and everything is okay. And the only thing left to say is the power rating. Well, that's difficult to peg with these kind of amps because, as I said, it depends on the power supply you decided to purchase. They say if you go for 48 volts, 10 amperes, you will get 200 watts stereo, so 2-channel driven, to 200 watts into 4 ohms, which usually means that you get something lower, probably around 100 watts, into 8 ohms, which would be a more fair rating. But with this small 24 volts, 3 amperes power supply that I got, the power rating is probably below 50 watts into 4 ohms, and I'm guessing like solid 20 watts into 8 ohms or something like that. And let's talk about how that performs. To start with the tonality, there's nothing wrong with LeAudio Cattle Pro amplifier. There's bass, it's not particularly deep and weighty, but it's there. And then mid-range is really clean, clear, precise. Highs are well extended. Even the separation of tones and just pinpointing them is really, really good, as it is with most of these Texas Instruments chip amps. But the thing is that, like all other chip amps, it doesn't really possess big dynamic scale or deep authoritative bass that can slam hard and fill your room with the bass. Even if your speakers can do that, these little amps are just not the ones to drive them to do that. For me personally, what this does the best, and it feels like it was designed to do that, is to be a desktop amp. When I used it in a desktop environment, you're listening in a near field, and you don't need the sound pressure to be high enough to fill your entire room. It just needs to make that area between you and speakers filled with sound pressure. And in that use case, this amp performs quite well and okay. But if you move to a room setup where you sit in the midfield or far field way from speakers and they need to fill the room, they need to pressurize the room, this will not do it in my opinion. I can get the volume quite loud, it's not a problem, but I noticed the lack of scale and that bass authority. And also, with this small 24 volts 3 amperes power supply, I managed to push it to the limit where it started to feel strained. And some really dynamic, for example, cymbal crashes and things like that, I could hear some slight distortion creeping. So to make it simple, big rooms, big sound pressures, choose bigger amps. But for smaller near-field environments, this one would do just fine. Which leads me to some comparisons, and the only one I will do is with Fosi ZA3 because I had it at hands when I was reviewing this one. The Fosi ZA3 is basically the same as V3 but has balanced connections. And when I compare these two, I noticed very slight tonal differences, like Fosi sounded a bit warmer in the mid-bass and touch more laid back and refined in highs. This Cattle Pro amp sounded touch leaner in the bass and a bit sparklier in highs. Everything else is quite comparable. The power, the authority, the weight, the scale. Once again, I would suggest both of these for use as a desktop amplifiers and not to fill big rooms. Because if you use them in that near-field environment, you will get most out of them. You will get their cleanliness, clarity, but personally, I would not use either of these in a big room setup. And with that said, I think it's time to slowly end this video. As you noticed, it was quite quick, quite to the point, because to be perfectly honest here, there is not much to differentiate these chip-based amps. They all used the same Texas Instrument chip, and then they all use external switching power supplies with a range of powers that you can choose from. Those tonal differences that I can notice are probably due to use of a different op amps in the buffer, in the preamp section of these amps. So from now on, I think I'll stop reviewing new chip amp models if they're based on the exact same chip and have the same switching power supply selection, etc., because it's getting tiresome. I did Fosi V3, ZA3, V3 monos, etc., now this Cattle Pro amp, and I will make exception for only one more model, and that is AIMA A07 mono, because many of you told me that they implemented this solution the best. So I already got these, I haven't listened to them yet, but I will do that review. But after that is done, I really think I'm done with TI chip amps. They all have similar qualities and similar shortcomings, only slight functionality features and tonal differences, and to me personally it feels like reviewing them doesn't add much information to you or to me. It doesn't add true new experience. I believe you can just look at all of these and see which shop carries them, which price is right for you, which design and maybe small feature differences is correct for you, and you can choose that way. And with that, I hope you liked the video. See you next time.